So we were at the end of last lecture, I was sort of working through these fundamental pieces. We'll talk about them, I think, for a lot of the rest of this lecture. And then the next piece is robustness. All right, good. Okay, so this general issue of how do we measure things, and of course, ending up with one number being a problem. I'll have some more examples of that. So we got a little bit into this list of examples, and I think it was at this point that the banana cutter got involved. All right, so we had a list of pieces here where we collapse onto this 1D spectrum, 1D line for all these complicated things, because that is easy to compare. So BMI has become one, which is pretty weird, right? I mean, that's taking, what is it again? It's like mass divided by height squared or something. What is it? Does anyone know? No one cares. No one cares about BMI. But insurance companies do, and yeah, interesting. I think, so it's a weird, okay, well, let's look at it. It's a weird one, and dimensionally it's kind of strange, right? I mean, I'm just super opposed to this thing. Look at that. You can, thank you. It's like making you do it. It's body mass divided by the square of body height, which is just a weird thing. I mean, if density is somewhat uniform, then and then you have a diagnostic, right? Then you're good or bad. It doesn't matter if you're Arnold Schwarzenegger or something. Yeah, pretty weird. And I mean, maybe it drives some things. IQ, right? So that humanity was quite taken with that for a long time. It's still talked about. It's controversial. But that was, you could sort everyone. Certainly, countries used it to sort people in schools for a long time. People got scholarships and all sorts of things based on this thing. There's anyone heard of the Flynn effect, which is that IQ has been going up and up and up over generations. It's named after a New Zealand researcher who just noticed this, right? And it's kind of a curious thing. And some of the ideas were, it's like, there's much more sort of fiction, and people are exposed to a lot more meta stuff, so they're better at there's more school or whatever. But so that was all very good, but it's been going down apparently over the last 20 years. So that's a rough thing. I hadn't looked at it for a while, and I looked it up the other day. I'm like, oof, not great. Effective temperature. This one kind of drives me nuts, right? It's like, it's raining or whatever, and and then it's like, but it's effectively 63 or something. It's just like, we can handle, it tells what the wind is and the humidity. Like, just, right. That's just really silly. Of course, money, right? So you map everything onto money, right? This thing is worth so much, and this thing, and there's a direct comparison, right? It's pretty good. Salary, right? That's a good one. Stock, so again, this is money, right? So this is what they're worth, yeah. Complexity of civilization, so the link is not working there, but this is Turkin, and this is a paper that just appeared in PNAS, and it's a very, just an enormous effort to get quantification of all sorts of aspects from civilizations across the world over many, many thousands of years to measure some aspect of them. It's like 6 or 7 or 8 aspects that they focus on. And I don't have it written up here, but essentially what they come up with, and they don't really say, they say there's one dimension for, there's a one-dimensional thing for, let me get there, in fact, the right thing. So, yeah, so historical analysis uncovers a single dimension of complexity. That's it, right? So you're running your country or your city, you feed in all its data, and it gives you a number out, and then you're like, we're better than, Santa Fe or whatever, right? Like, yay. So lots of people involved. This is, and it is an interesting thing to have done, but here's the problem in the end, I would say. Right, so there are all these different things. Like, is it a hierarchical? Is it a government measure? Money, money. Like, how developed is it? How developed is infrastructure? Written text. Does it have this sort of thing? Information systems, capital, population, territory, right, and then just population. So these are actually, I guess there's quite a few. There are maybe 9, right, around the world. And then they do a principal component analysis thing and come up with the fact that there's really this one dominant measure, and actually what it is all of these equally weighted. So you add them all up, right? And there's really not a second principal, like it's really dominated by this first one. So it's basically, you have to have all of these things. So to say then that that's one dimension, I think is not right. And really what this is the Anna Karenina story, right? So the first line of Anna Karenina, it's a little quote, which is, right, that happy families are all the same and unhappy families are all different in their own special ways, right? So dystopias are, manifold, right? There are all sorts of ways for things to go wrong. To keep it all together, you got to have a lot of things operating. And so this is the Jared Diamond story, right, of Guns, Germs, and Steel, was that, and again, actually calling the Anna Karenina principle, that you have to have all of these things before things can take off, right? So you need to have, and this is all debatable and so on, but a domesticable animal and a crop and, water and all these sorts of things. Obviously some basic things, but minerals, you need to have these things. So, some parts of the world really hard to do that, just, really arid, or you're in the middle of the Pacific, whatever it is, it's just hard to have all of these things running. Okay, so the upshot for me is that, the title is very misleading. It's very misleading. This is actually, you need all of these things to be running, and that's, you wouldn't want to call it a single piece. All right. Last one I have here is, and maybe it's down the bottom. So there's a 1D axis for political ideologies, right? And there are various versions of this that are much more elaborate, but even just 2 dimensions, like a social axis and an economic axis. That's sort of often famously presented. I'm sure BuzzFeed has done that by this point. You can find where you are relative to Gandhi and Stalin and so on. So, but a 1D axis is very, it's just sitting there, and it's the French, I guess, had people sitting on the left and the right, and they eventually just called them the left and the right, and they just became the left and the right. There were just 2 groups, and so it's this spatial metaphor which was just waiting for us to get trapped in, like flies in a web, and it's hard to get out of it. And I don't know what's going on with that now, like as to whether people, I think, maybe actually becoming more. There's reality of people's political, like if you ask them the right questions, they turn out to be not entirely on these lines. But there's so much feedback, right, from news and so on, that I think people might be cohering a little more actually on these lines, right? And then it's not even a line, it's just like there's a point here and a point here. So we need to sort of, not get ourselves trapped there. But I don't know, that's a difficult one. So this all connects, I guess, into Facebook and questionable things, but this is work from a while ago. I have a few pieces here measuring personality and so on, and some are jokes, I suppose, but this is a very serious effort based on, I think these were surveys at the time, but pretty large scale. So does this still hold up? Ocean is still considered to be, is this still considered to be okay for personality? People argue about it.
Oh, yes.
It has a nice acronym.
The Big Five.
The Big Five, right. It's based on these sort of semantic differentials, not neurotic to very neurotic, and then you sort of answer all these questions, and then these are these 5. Again, it's a principal component kind of thing. I would presume it was. For meaning, there's valence, which is a happiness, sadness scale, excitement, and a power scale. It's the 3 dimensions of meaning. But that's work from the 50s, right? For emotion, there's the 4 of fear, anger, disgust, and sadness, surprise, and happiness. And that's Inside Out, for example, but they left surprise out, which was a surprise. Okay, so these are these 5 things, and so you start to quantify things. This is, of course, self-reported, and that's a concern. Big concern is mass manipulation. This is just measuring aspects of, showing, lots of different systems that we need to worry about, but the big upshot here is not to end with one number. People are they really want one number for a lot of systems. Just do not do that. Different things. This is openness, so this is more open, right? For example, in terms of behavior. Could help me. Conscientiousness, I guess not so much. It seems weird, right? New England. Neuroticism, that's us. Yeah. Bridging cultures, right? So this is Mississippi and Louisiana. So if you talk about the right things, you know, it's going to work out. Extroversion and agreeableness. So, so nice. Those friendly Vermonters. With our happiness stuff, Vermont is often near the top in terms of the tweets that come out of Vermont. But it's also like closed, like its variance isn't that high, right? So it's a little, things are okay, but it's not as, doesn't get as excited as other places. In terms of most looking around the world, like 24 corpora, 10 different places, Brazil and Mexico, yeah, they had the biggest spreads in emotional variance. I mean, all 10 languages we've looked at, they all have positive biases, but which is another. It's a Pollyanna principle baked into language. It's really kind of fantastic. Dungeons and Dragons, right? So people figured out they needed some variation in this. It's just kind of funny. Charisma and strength and whatever, dexterity. I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? So they make this sort of, we're going to run this game, and you're actually going to have a whole bunch of attributes. It's my favorite show, obviously. But it's from Reddit, and of course, people debate the actual choices in great detail. Right, so there's those. You've got the things, your charisma and all those pieces, and then this is your kind of your alignments, right? There's a law, chaos, and good, evil this way. It's fantastic. My wife is chaotic neutral, I think. Yeah.